Listen to podcasts of Joe Walsh and Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So Friday, Jason Van Dyke sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison after being convicted on second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated assault. And some powerful testimony from both sides, from Jason Van Dyke's daughter, as well as from Laquan McDonald's great uncle, among others.
Yeah, and Jason Van Dyke spoke to the judge.
I had prayed daily for the soul of Laquan McDonald, and it was due to my actions that the McDonald family has suffered.
And here's his wife.
I just beg for the least amount of time, if not probation, for my husband.
And after a long day, it was a long sentencing hearing, the judge rendered his decision.
This is a tragedy for both sides. So this is not easy, and I don't expect it to be easy. My findings are an appropriate sentence would be 81 months in the Illinois Department of Corrections, 2 years mandatory supervised release.
Not surprising, the reaction from some in Chicago, some of the op-ed writers that really promote race identity politics, Darlene Glanton in the Tribune, Mary Mitchell in the Sun-Times. Mary Mitchell's opening line in her op-ed: "In the end, the life of teenager Laquan McDonald was not valued." Well, I'll tell you what, that's an interesting statement that demands review beyond his shooting death at the hands of Jason Van Dyke, and should include a conversation about the foster care system, should include a conversation about the breakdown of the nuclear family in society in general and the black community in particular.
He had never had a father in his life, or even a father figure in his life.
Right. So I would say there were a lot of people who I guess didn't value Laquan McDonald's life long before he ever came across Jason Van Dyke. But that's sort of a sociological conversation. Let's have a criminal justice one. And to help us do that, we're pleased to be joined by Dan Herbert. He was Jason Van Dyke's criminal defense attorney. Dan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Sure. Good morning.
So your reaction to the sentence that was meted out for your client?
We still would have preferred probation. Obviously, we knew that there was not a chance we were going to get probation. I was happy and relieved when I heard the sentence, but when I went back and spoke with my client and his family and saw their positive reaction, I haven't felt better since I got into this case, just seeing their reactions.
Were you surprised? I mean, the judge pretty much rolled those 16 counts of aggravated battery into one count. Or one act. Obviously you were pleased by it, but were you surprised he went that way?
No, that's what we thought the law, that was a controlling law from the beginning. As we got into it, it really was kind of a murky situation. So, I truly think the judge made the right ruling, but depending how you interpreted some of these cases, it could have called for a consecutive sentence, but I truly think the judge made the right call.
How do you respond to the criticisms of the sentence? I've got my own response, but I want yours. Comparing and contrasting to other sentences for murder, most notably because it's most recent, the 80-some-odd years that the killer of Hadia Pendleton received. That's one of the comparisons being made. This black man who killed Hadia Pendleton gets 80-some years. Jason Van Dyke, white police officer, gets not even 7. That's not fair.
I'm not too surprised by it. Obviously, this case has touched off very strong racial feelings and opinions. And, this is the relatively small sentence that people are calling this is not a reflection on the value of Laquan McDonald's life at all. It's a reflection on the totality of the circumstances surrounding the actions of Jason Van Dyke. At the very worst, Jason Van Dyke made a mistake and it was 14.2 seconds of his life of 40 years that surrounded the time frame of the mistake. So certainly that had to be taken into context, along with the fact that there was a lot of other people responsible for Jason Van Dyke being called to that situation, namely LaQuan McDonald. I mean, that has to be taken into account. You know, for LaQuan McDonald had 20 minutes to drop this knife and had committed numerous felonies when he was encountered by Jason Van Dyke, and Jason Van Dyke acted in 14.2 seconds of his life, and I think the judge took that all into consideration.
Do you think the judge took, LaQuan McDonald's past arrests into consideration? Because if you look at his arrest record, it's very long. And his great grandma said that when he was growing up, he was pulled over by police at least 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah, well, and everyone talks about race, and I understand that the black community and the relationship with the police, but that's young kids in general. I grew up in Rogers Park, and we were pulled over 2 or 3 times a week.
What'd you
when
do,
we were
Dan?
Teenagers too.
Yeah.
What were you doing, Dan?
Wait a second. How did
Stop
How did
egging
you?
your principal's
Are
house.
you really an attorney? Did you really pass the character and fitness threshold?
Yeah.
Oh wow! All right.
As far as you know.
Well, how
No,
is okay? Answer the question.
But I'm sorry, I forgot the question now.
Oh yeah, it's all right. No, well, so Jason Van Dyke, where is he now? Where is he going to be housed for the next 2.5 years?
You know what? I don't think I'm at liberty to talk about that right now.
Okay.
Well, we know he's in. Well, he was in Rock Island, but are you guaranteed he's got to be separated from the other prisoners because everyone loves to kill a cop killer? No.
Yeah, we don't know the specifics. We have certainly reached out to some people to see how much protection we can get, and at the end of the day, it's going to be up to that system to see how they want to deal with them. But people are cognizant of that fact. There's no question about it.
How did you react to Tony Preckwinkle's statement, not just about the sentencing, but that this is the first Chicago police officer convicted of killing a Chicago resident in 50 years, but it's certainly not the first Chicago police officer to have killed a resident in the last 50 years?
Well, she's technically correct. I mean, there's been a lot of police shootings and police killings. It doesn't make them criminal.
Well, I think she was mentioned. I think when I say killing, I think she means murdering. So, yeah, I think she was essentially suggesting criminal.
Yeah, I took it the same way that you did. You know what? Have there been shootings that looked equally as brutal to this? There's no question. I mean, this shooting looked brutal, but the fact of the matter is that, a video showing somebody being shot 16 times, no matter 100% justified or not, is going to look horrible. A video has certainly changed the game, and Tony Preckwinkle's comment obviously has a lot to do with her current situation. Let the voters
what do you think of
decide
her
how they
campaign
see that.
ad? I mean, in her campaign ad, she's acting like she's the one responsible for getting the video released. She's responsible for releasing the medical examiner's report. Is there any truth?
Yeah, I found that interesting because for years that was done under a cloak of secrecy, and we found it out through a pretty extensive discovery and FOIA process, and it was like this secret hush meeting that she had, and now all of a sudden when she's running, it's becoming a campaign ploy. But yeah, I wasn't surprised by the ad. This is not the first politician to try and exploit the death of LaQuan McDonald in their favor.
Yeah, you'll note too, just as a matter of course, politicians turn out to be more heroic when they're running for office. You find out about all their heroism that they've suppressed until they're holding themselves out to the voters. Yeah. How much, or if at all, did the acquittal of the other 3 officers in the obstruction of justice case, do you think, influence the judge's sentencing in Van Dyke's matter?
That's a really good question, and actually I was talking with a couple people last night about that, and I'll probably find out at some point down the road, but I think it did have fairly significant effect because the ruling was so strong by the judge in that case, and I think it would be hard to not affect any human being when they took into consideration the facts of this case. And, I think Judge Gaughan had a number in mind, and I think that number was reduced by the sentencing memo, the testimony, and possibly by that ruling the day prior.
There was a lot of celebration in the black community among black activists, community groups, not just limited to the black community, but in particular when Van Dyke was convicted. Now, that's been tempered because of the sentencing and because of the acquittal of the other officers I mentioned. What's your message, from a police perspective? I know you're not a police spokesman, but you do a lot of legal defense work for FOP. To talk to people who are very skeptical of the Chicago police, and this case, the sentencing, feeds that skepticism in terms of how they should understand what the Chicago police is as an organization and what rank-and-file police officers are trying to do on a daily basis.
It's important that people recognize, obviously, that police officers are human beings, and they come to a job every day with the stresses that we have of our families and everything else that's going on, and coupled with going into these some of these neighborhoods where they're just seeing so much despair that they're really under a lot of stress, and they are doing the best that they can, and their actions are not based on race, they're not based on malice, they're reactions to situations that they're seeing. And I think that people have to remember we need the police. I don't think anyone will argue that in maybe a different form, but if all these people that are calling for the police to disengage, it rings hollow, because a lot of these people are not living in neighborhoods where they need the police. They call for this reform and then they go off into the hills, but the people that are being affected by this police shutdown and Ferguson effect are the most vulnerable citizens in our society, and they need to be protected. So people just have to recognize police are doing the best they can, and they are under a tremendous amount of stress, which hopefully will lessen in the future with more police, better training, and better conditions.
Yeah, and it is noteworthy. At the same time, you have people like Toni Preckwinkle saying what she said about the police. All of the Chicago mayoral candidates are talking about how they can make the city safer, and every one of them necessarily includes a plan to increase policing, make policing more proactive. So a little bit of out of both sides of their mouths, which I know is nothing new in this city. But anyway, Dan Herbert, defense attorney for Jason Van Dyke. Dan, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm Lou Downs.